I'm Heather, and this is the Living with Addiction podcast, where I show you how you have more power than you realize when it comes to helping yourself and your child that's struggling with addiction. Hey, everybody. Before I get started today, I want to let you know that if you have any topics that you would like to hear me talk about on the podcast, you can let me know by emailing me, heather@heatherrosscoaching.com. And I'd love to hear what you would like to hear. So today's episode is about creating a future that's different than your past. It seems like your future should naturally be different than your past, but it isn't. And that's because our thoughts are repetitive. If we aren't monitoring them or intentional with them, then we keep thinking the same thoughts over and over again, having the same feelings, taking the same actions, and creating the same results over and over again in our life. Think about how you've been having the same fight in your marriage since day one. That's because your thoughts about it have never changed. If you changed your thoughts about it, then the situation would change. But that's why that keeps repeating, because all the thoughts about it are the same. Now, think about your relationship with your child that's struggling with addiction. Do the same arguments and tensions pop up in that relationship over and over again as well? That's how it was with me and my daughter. And until I very carefully changed my thoughts about her addiction, myself, who she was, and our relationship, it kept happening. So, those are just two examples of how the past becomes the future, specifically just in relationships. But this can be happening in many or all areas of your life where you're just recreating the past. So, I've given you the key to changing your thoughts with the model in episode 16. So, listen to that episode if you haven't already, because I have clients make major changes in their life week after week while working with me because of the awareness and new thoughts and belief that coaching and the model creates together. And today I want to focus on creating a new future with dreams. And dreams are just thoughts. And when you take action on them and follow through, your dreams become reality. Those are the results of the model. Dreams that are for you and only you, though, not your kids or your family or anybody else, just for you. I mean, does anybody who is listening to this feel stuck or frustrated? That comes from not knowing where you're going. You know where you are, and you know you don't like it there. You know you want to get out of there, but you don't know how to get out or where you want to go. You just want to be somewhere else. You probably just want to be happy, or you want things to be easy, but try putting that into your GPS and see where it gets you. You can't go somewhere new if you don't know the destination. GPS needs an exact address to give you the directions to get there. So, first things first, you need to have a clear destination for your future in order to get out of it sucks hereville and get a different future. So, let's take a quick look at how we end up somewhere we don't want to be, which is what I was just saying in the scenario. Like, if you're feeling stuck, you're somewhere you don't want to be. It starts by not having a clear plan in the first place. So think about how, as we're growing up, we're taught that we need to go to school, make good grades while we're in school, then go to college, make good grades there, then get a job, then get married, buy a house, and have some kids. I mean, honestly, that whole plan is pretty vague. And what do you do once you check all of those boxes in life? Now what? What if you don't want to do those things? Then what do you do? I mean, does dreaming stop once you check all the boxes? For many people, Dreaming goes on. It's just that it's hopes and dreams for their kids and loved ones instead of for themselves. Then we just keep existing in this stagnant space, waiting for something else to happen, but it doesn't. Just get caught up in everyday life. We're left feeling unfulfilled and we start looking outside of ourselves for answers. We think that it's our marriage or the fact that we're single or our kids or our job or maybe even the neighbors with the barking dog are the reason we're unhappy. But this is a trap because we don't have to look very far to find imperfect humans to blame for how we feel. And then what? Then they have to change so we can feel better. And we don't find out what the actual reason for the unhappiness is because we think the answer is outside of us. As life erodes our spirit, we forget who we are. We pick up all this residue called conditioning. We take it on and it separates us from our authentic self. Like we have to really look back into our hearts in order to remember our authentic self. When you were a little kid, did you ever lay on the ground and look up the sky and daydream? Like I can remember when my mom used to lay out when I was little, I used to like kind of lay half underneath the chair, which I can only imagine the tan lines that created. But I would lay there on the ground underneath her chair with my head sticking out, staring up at the sky, daydreaming. But do you remember when you stopped doing that? I mean, dreams are just thoughts, and new thoughts create new results. You have to think it before you can create it. The self-coaching model is a great way to guide yourself through the process of dreaming again. I used it to identify all of the conditioning that was driving my behavior, and it helped me come off autopilot and start intentionally driving my life. It's not easy to do that though, because our brains don't like change. Like nobody's brain likes change. Some people train their brains to override it, but nobody's brain likes it. Our brains like efficiency. So if you feel resistant to what I'm saying right now, just remember that your brain wants to keep things easy. Never changing or doing anything different, it's easy. Growth is hard, but it's not hard because there's something wrong with you. It's hard because of something called the motivational triad. We have evolved to be motivated by survival. Our goals as humans have been three things: seek pleasure, avoid pain, expend minimal effort. Seeking pleasure and avoiding pain is what leads to addiction, obesity, codependence, depression, disease. And that's what I was talking about in last week's episode about buffering. Avoiding pain keeps us from moving forward with creating what we want in life. Expending minimal effort has us doing very little to change and evolve. But in order to grow, we have to adopt a new motivational triad. We have to be brave and move towards short-term discomfort of trying new things in order to keep growing and evolving so we get what we want in the long run. But in order to grow, this has to be your new motivational triad. Seek growth, embrace discomfort, expend massive effort wisely. The most important investment of your time that you will make each day is making sure that you have solid mental health. Period. That's it. Switch the focus of your thoughts from your child or anybody else to you. Start dreaming again. Dream for yourself. I mean, think about this. If suffering doesn't help your child, then maybe living a life that fulfills your dreams and living by that example will help them. You can support your addicted child, but you have to support yourself as well. You may feel like your life is falling apart and unmanageable, but you can find a new normal where your happiness doesn't depend on your child changing or getting sober, or anybody else changing for that matter. And that's great news because that means you're the one that your happiness depends on. Remember earlier how I was talking about that it's a trap to think that the answer is outside of us, that our happiness lies outside of us. It's always inside of us. And creating a vision for a new future is not only a higher level of thinking, it involves the possibility of failure, which we want to avoid because staying the same is easier than change. Whether we like our results or not, it's still staying the same. It still follows that motivational triad. So, just think about where your future will be if you keep recreating your past. Like, where are you going right now? If you keep doing what you've been doing, where are you going? Where will you be in 5 years, 10, 20, or 30 years? Do you like what you see when you think about that? Are you on the path you want to be on? Now, imagine what you would be doing if your child was sober and you were focused on yourself. This might be hard to imagine at first, but keep asking yourself until your mind opens up to it. What would you be doing if your child was sober and you were focused on yourself? How would you feel? How can you create that feeling now? So the feeling you would be feeling if your child was sober, what can you do for yourself to create that feeling now? Sit down and write about it. Take the time to think about it. Write about all the things you want in your life for you, not for your child. Start dreaming about what you want again. You need something to look forward to. And you can start with small changes. One of the things I did when I realized I was at that place of feeling completely unfulfilled, like something was missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was, and the only dreams I had were for my daughter. One of the first things I did was I made a list of 50 things that I wanted. And it wasn't just like things that I wanted, it was also feelings, because I was so numb that I didn't feel excitement or like really feel happiness anymore. And I wanted to feel those feelings again. But I couldn't even come up with 50 things that I wanted all at once. 50 things to want really isn't a lot, but it was a struggle for me to come up with that. It took a while, but the whole idea was just to start wanting things for myself again. And then I wrote down places I wanted to go and things that I wanted to try and dreams I could come up with, big and small, like just anything that I could think of. And of course, again, it took time because I had not been wanting things for myself. I was just starting the process. I'd been stuck in the grind for so long that I was just going through the motions of life. So as I put my attention there and made the lists I mentioned, I started dreaming again. Like my dreams started coming back to me. So, what's the most fabulous life you can imagine for yourself? What have you always wanted but been afraid to want? What would you do if you were positive you would succeed and you weren't worried about failure? What would you do if you didn't think it was stupid? Around Valentine's Day after dinner, my mom and sister and I they were eating candy, but we were all reading the wrappers. They had these, they were individually wrapped, and each wrapper had a question on it. And one of the questions was, what's your dream job? And it was like so easy for me to answer that I have my dream job. I'm doing my dream job every day. I love the work that I do. It's fulfilling. It never feels like work to me. But in order to get to a place that I could have this job, I had to dream about it first. Until I started dreaming, I thought that I would work in accounting until I retired. Like I actually didn't have any kind of plan when I left my career, which is, thinking back, how scary that was. I took a huge leap of faith and believed that once I left my job, my new career would come to me. And it was really hard to give up a steady paycheck and make, huge adjustments to my lifestyle and follow my intuition that if I would quit, I would be able to figure out what my next steps were. So I took the leap. It was not an easy transition. At the time, we had a lake house and it was up for sale, but we were using it as a vacation rental because it needed to either stay rented or sell in order for us to live on one income. Well, the first thing that happens after I quit my job was the property manager stole the rent money from us and a bunch of other people that she was working for, and then she filed bankruptcy. So now we don't have the rent money and we don't have a property manager to rent it out anymore. And I thought about running back to work, but I stayed faithful to my dream. And a few months later, the lake house sold. But then, before the ink even dried on the closing papers, my husband lost his job. So once again, I was tempted to go back to work, but I still didn't go back. I told my husband not to compromise and hold out for the right job, and it took 6 long months. That's 6 months of me sticking with my dream and not going back to my old career and having faith it would all work out. And it did. Dreaming gave me the chance to trust myself and my intuition too. Like I had to really stick through some tough times to make this happen. So if you start dreaming, don't panic if your dream doesn't turn out like you expected. Like the path to get there was not anything like I expected to be, but it didn't mean that anything had gone wrong. But guess what else happened during this process of me dreaming, going after what I wanted, and sticking with it even though it got really hard? I started figuring out what I liked, and I started figuring out what I wanted. I started living an example of the life I wanted my daughter to live. My focus turned from my daughter to me, because I had other things to think about. I had other things to work on. I let her out from underneath the microscope that I had her under. I started accepting her for who she was and stopped trying to change her. I let her leave the nest and live her life the way that she wanted, even though I did not like the way she was choosing to live it. She stopped hating me, though, because she saw changes in how I was relating to her and accepting her and the way that I was treating myself. Eventually, she started trusting me and we became close again. And that was just the beginning. Today, the only dream I have for my daughter is to be sober and happy. There's no conditions on that of what her happiness looks like or what her life looks like, just that she's sober and happy. It's the only dreams that I have for her. The rest of my dreams are for me. I'm no longer recreating my past because I'm intentionally creating thoughts that lead to a different future. I've shared with you many times in recent episodes my exact thought changes that I'm creating so that I create an intentional future. So I challenge you to do the same for yourself. Start dreaming again. If you get stuck, you can use the link in the show notes to sign up for a call with me, and I'll help you take your focus off your child and put it on you so you can create your own dreams. Now, that's all I've got for today. I hope that you have a great rest. I have a hard time saying that every week. I say rest of the week. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and I'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about my work, go to heatherrosscoaching.com. If you want to help other parents who are struggling with a child's addiction, you can do it 2 different ways. First, you can share the podcast with them directly, or you can share it on your social media. Second, you can leave a review. Talk to you next week.